Welcome to Q&A with S&A. I'm Andrea, as you already know, and I talk too much, which is my thing, and Shane is sitting beside me. And
Hello.
Today, our special guest is Dave Hickford from Pot Plant Productions. And Dave, we worked out just before we came to air that we kind of met him about 12 months ago at a place called Equa, which is one of our favourite places. And Dave did a presentation to the team there about podcasting, and it tweaked my interest in doing a podcast because Dave was actually so engaging and said, this is a really cool thing to do. And now he's with us today. So thank you for joining us today, Dave.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Tell me how you got to where you are with Pot Plant Productions.
Mm-hmm.
And podcasting is not just what you do. So talk to us about that as well.
Sure. I guess Pot Plant Productions is myself and my business partner Alex's business, and which is essentially custom production consulting, and that ranges from live events and scopes through to podcasting. So we have had this business running for about 3 years now, and both coming from a background of production managers for live events all over Australia. Collectively, we both have in the decades doing that. And we started Pot Plant Productions during the pandemic, mostly out of wanting to just say yes to things. And as the world was shutting down, we found that we were constantly having conversations around how do we do this and how do we find ways to say yes. And so one of the first ventures we actually did as Pot Plant Productions was podcasting, because the world was shutting down, and we have this ability to make events happen.
Yep.
And are used to creating something out of nothing. So why don't we just find ways to make that work? So podcasting was actually the way that it all started. And then as soon as the world opened up, we were lucky that our reputation got us through some doors, and we haven't looked back. In the last 3 years, we've been lucky to do some really cool events as well.
Yeah. One of our earliest guests, started his podcast during the pandemic. So it seemed to be a thing, didn't it? That people were finding ways to connect with other people, and podcasting is a good way.
Yeah. And I listen to podcasts all the time. So I think it was a really unique way, and something that grabbed me about podcasting was that it is for everybody, because you can be niche, and that it doesn't, I like it as a medium that doesn't necessarily seek to be popular. It just seeks to seek out people who are interested in your subject.
Yeah.
So to me, I found that really appealing, that it's can be what you want it to be, because it's as wide as you want it to be, or as niche as you want it to be.
Yeah. How many podcasts do you guys have involvement in? I know some people come in here to the studio, which is where we are at today, and some people you work with remotely and stuff. But
that's a good number off the top of my head. I don't know the answer to that. I would say in the 20, 30, 40 range. And that's, some are very consistent. Some are every week. For example, the Paddock 43, who do a weekly Formula One podcast. And then some are more seasonal based. And so we'll see them for 8 episodes at a time very quickly. And some are more informational based. So we might see them 8 times throughout the year.
Yeah.
And it's very structured, and it's a very produced minute by minute podcast where they've really thought out every moment to connect with their audience. So it varies. That amount. And then some are here constantly or at eClark constantly. And some are, they come in and they tick off 8 episodes, and then we might not see them for 3 months. And then it continues.
Yeah.
And there's no particular formula. You just said there's all different forms of podcasts in terms of how often you do them, etc.
Yeah. There isn't. I think the only thing we've learned is consistency. But as long as you take that for what it means for you, is that if you communicate with your audience what your consistency is, I think that you can make it work. If you say it's a season and there's 8 episodes and it's this season, and then they know that at the end of that you're gonna do another season, then that you've given that information and they can hold on to that. The only thing we found doesn't work is if you say you're going to do it weekly and then that stops.
Yeah.
That's when we've seen that you'll lose people.
Yes.
But it can be varied. You can say, we're a sporadic podcast and this is going to happen 10 times a year, but we're going to tell you where it is.
Yeah.
Maybe not the most ideal, but at least from the get-go, you're communicating what your audience can expect. So even that works better.
Yeah. It tends to be sort of cultish a bit, doesn't it? Like people will be like, oh, there was no episode this week. Where is it happening? And
Hugely.
Stuff. Yeah.
Usually, like people build it into their routines as well.
Yeah.
What all the data shows is that people, I've done a lot of research about podcasting.
Yeah, of course.
But people build it into if they go to the gym, if they drive to work. So you do become part of people's day. And so that's where I think the consistent ones tend to make it work, because people kind of go, you know what, on Monday I'm going to listen to this.
Yeah.
Or on, maybe it comes out Monday, but I go to the gym on Tuesdays. So I'm going to listen to this on Tuesdays. And maybe I know that I've got to go for a tradie. I know that I've got to go on site on Thursday, Friday. And so I do my hour-long podcast on the one where I've got the drive. So you really do, you build yourself into people's lives.
Yeah.
And it's something that is going to stand the test of time as well. It's not a fad.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. It's something that's only growing. And I think interesting in that it's not linear necessarily. As much as it is, and you always want to listen to the new thing, people backstep it and go, I like this podcast. I didn't know they had that guest on. So I'll go back and listen to that guest. And you find that a lot of time people will even search a guest name, particularly for somebody who's maybe got a little bit more social influence. They'll search the guest in Spotify or Apple Podcasts and find the other ones. Or even they might, for a podcast like yours, they might have listened to an episode on a recommendation and then go, you know what, I've got some questions about getting a mortgage, and I see that they've done a podcast about exactly that. I like the way their podcast is. I'll go back and listen to that episode because it's really specific to me. So yeah, it's definitely not a straight line. It's a bit of a web of how people listen to a podcast.
And in terms of length of a podcast too, same thing. It can vary.
Can vary. The data kind of shows that about 40 minutes to an hour is a sweet spot. But in saying that, news shows tend to be a little bit shorter, 20 minutes. People kind of, so only so much doom and gloom you can take. About 20 minutes is the key.
Yeah.
And then history podcasts and maybe very specific podcasts seem to be like 2 hours, 3 hours.
Yeah, okay.
Because, you can't give the history of Rome in 20 minutes. There you go.
That's a pretty niche thing though. Like having 2 hours to listen to a podcast is probably pretty niche, isn't it?
And they're the ones that maybe have 4 releases a year because
okay.
it's being researched and that community accepts that you're so in depth in what you do. We get that. We're happy to wait and we're happy to listen that long because of how it works.
Yeah. What's your favourite podcast? Doesn't have to be one that you do. What's one that you will always listen to every week or you look forward to?
Yeah, I change it up. Lately I've been doing short history of, which is actually like a 40-minute history podcast, and every week they release a thing. So it's short history of Queen Victoria, short history of the stock exchange.
Yeah,
and
cool.
I like to just get these quick kind of.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So that's one I'm pretty consistent on. But other than that, I reckon I scroll through. I change if we're doing something with the business, and Alex and I are talking a lot about business structure or business growth. Maybe I'll head over to My First Million or a podcast where they're talking about these entrepreneurial hardships or systems. And then if I need a laugh, I'll head to a comedy one. Yeah. So I vary, but I tend to, history is kind of where I can zone out.
Yeah, yeah. Where are you when you listen to them?
In the car always.
Yeah.
Yep. I drive a lot for work.
Yeah.
So I just spend my time taking off some thoughts.
Yeah. It's a really good idea to do it in the car. I know some people do it, when they're on the treadmill at the gym and stuff like that as well. And as you said, with the timing of them, like 40 minutes or something, if someone's on the treadmill, 40 minutes is a good amount of time to be on the treadmill. So people do organise their week around that, don't they?
That's more of that just shows that I don't go to the gym. If anything, I probably would if I did.
Yeah, I do not listen to podcasts when I'm at the gym either. I'm mostly moaning and complaining about being there. So it definitely is not a thing that I would do.
Exclusively
So.
the Rocky soundtrack.
Yeah. That would
Get
probably
motivation. Yeah.
So outside of podcasting, organising, because you are responsible for our podcast as well, which is it's the only reason it exists, I can tell you. We wouldn't have done it if we hadn't have had easy access to you. But aside from that, you also do production stuff, which is really exciting things. And you can't tell us exactly what you've got going on because I'm sure it's all top secret. But what have you done in the past and what sort of things are your favourite things to do?
We've done a lot. So, I mean, recently we did the Big Bash League finals, which is a fun full lead screen stage that gets pushed out in 6 minutes after a final. With a company called TLA employs us to do that on behalf of Big Bash League and Cricket Australia as part of their team.
Yep. So everywhere that's not just like Melbourne based.
No, so that was in Sydney.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting one too because we made that plan for all of Australia and then dwindled it down to being in Sydney the Friday before the Wednesday game. So
yeah, okay.
You have to be a little bit malleable in that sense. But definitely a company like TLA making us part of the team and they're great event agency and we come in as the specialist to make these technical things happen. We've done that. I guess other recent fun ones is there was a big Nike marathon we did with Seeker Agency as part of came in as part of their production and management team.
Yeah.
Doing a few things for the Melbourne Marathon. We've been lucky to do some Mercedes ones at the end of last year for an internal type thing, but on quite a large scale for some electric vehicle stuff that they're doing, and that one varied from the event landscape of the experience when they came in with LED screens and lighting and cars and presentations to actually filming the event and then editing a video for an output, so a little bit multifaceted. So that was with a company called Laneway Group. So yeah, varied stuff, and very lucky to be working with some big brands.
Yep.
And then I think what we like about it is that it is varied, and it's always a challenge. It always starts with a blank piece of paper and a challenge, and sometimes that's a very specific challenge.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's we want to exactly create this and let's figure out how to do it. And sometimes it's a little bit more of a creative experience, and it's how do we make people feel this way? How do we do something that is different and cool, and what would be wow, and then just kind of making it as good as it can be. Like if it's a LED screen, it's great that there's a 3 meter wide LED screen, but it would be better if the 3 meter wide LED screen was built into a wall so it looks like it's part of a wall and comes alive, and you just kind of put it through, I guess, the filters until you make it as good as it can be.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, you and Alex are 50-50 owners in the business.
We are, yes.
So do you complement each other in terms of the skill sets, or does you've each got your own niche in terms of what you offer?
Yeah, no, I think it's a bit of both. I would say, a different approach with a common goal would be the best way I would describe it. I would say Alex is very focused on the delivery and making sure that the timings line up and everything's right that way, and back end numbers and structure, making sure that it's always going to get delivered, and it's always every process is in place to make sure that we're tight and we're consistent, and that's his real strength is always keeping that in mind. And then I think, although I do that as well, I definitely sit a little bit more on the creative side of how are we gonna, this doesn't make sense on paper, so how can I bend this around to come up with a creative solution? I say that loosely because Alex does that as well, and I do what Alex does as well. It's just if it's gonna get drawn on a piece of paper, then probably I'll have the pencil and I'll be drawing it. But so united both.
Okay.
But I'd say Alex is a little bit more, he looks at the spreadsheet and makes sure it works, and I may be looking at the floor plan, and we just put something in front of a doorway. That's stupid.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
How did you meet Alex?
At a previous job.
Okay.
Yeah, we met each other at a previous job and just connected that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're employed by the same company, or
We were employed by the same company.
Okay.
And we just met each other, and I would even argue that maybe we saw each other as rivals because we were
Same job or
same sort of people, same
Mhm.
job, and when both want to be, I want to be the person who does it.
Yeah.
But I think that's more our want to do the fun, big things.
Yeah.
I think we both head towards the challenge, and so we were probably both, if something cool was to happen, we both want to do it.
Yeah.
Very consistently, and then that any form of a rivalry was quickly squashed by a friendship.
Yeah.
And then when pandemics happen and things get stood down, we just found ourselves doing welfare spot checks on each other. How you doing? All good. And then podcasts are a thing. How come people aren't doing podcasts and bouncing off each other? And then eventually it was kind of like we bounced off each other enough to go, why don't we just do that?
Yeah.
Make it happen.
So the pandemic actually forced your hand to actually look beyond where you were.
100%.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that probably we were both so busy in the years before that that we probably wouldn't have. So in definitely a shock to the system, pandemic, a complete stand down of our industry, the events industry.
Yes.
I know that I was out at Formula One about to deliver
Okay.
Yeah.
Before
Yeah.
we
And
won.
then they locked the gates.
and they literally locked the gates.
Yeah, yeah.
I was on a 2-way radio. Everybody be show ready, stand by, and then cancel. So culture shock, but then in hindsight, the best thing that could have happened because it forced our hand to do the thing that probably both of us always wanted to do and start our own business and do things for ourselves.
Yeah. And starting your own business, it's daunting.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you cope with that and the great unknown?
Yeah, it is daunting. And it's constant learning, I think. I think this is where I think Alex has a really great strength in that his eye for detail and to be over things is to be, what are all the things we need to tick and this procedure and this form and this thing. So that's his strength, and that's where I think he led really well in those moments. But daunting, yeah, it's like, where do you even start? I know that we found, the place to start was probably what do we want to do? What are the ideas?
Yeah.
And then, told somebody the idea and they said, that's great, I want to do that. And then we went, we need a business name and we got to incorporate and we have to, what structure do we want? And we went about that by looking at places that focused on startups. I'll say that our experience there was not that great in that they definitely focused on the sign you up and get you going. But then we realized that that's where the detail ended. And then we needed to learn our own lessons and branch out. But lessons to be learned on how to start a company. Which way do you want to start it? Is it a partnership? Is it a company? How do you want to split things? You have to have some real talks really
Yes,
quickly.
you do. Absolutely.
And talk about the worst case scenarios, which luckily we're both pretty willing to do.
Good.
But yeah, I think I knew some other people that started businesses in that time too, and I was surprised to hear that they hadn't had those hard conversations.
Yeah. And the name Pot Plant Productions,
Yeah,
where did that come from?
looking at a pot plant in my house.
Makes sense.
Which I will say that I regret that every once in a while. I go, probably could have had a better name than that.
How's that pot plant going, by the way? Is it still going all right?
It's still alive.
Great.
I think ultimately, so we said Pot Plant Productions, which now I think in the events world, a lot of people would say just PPP.
Yeah.
Because we both had many jobs in production and they were always very tech focused. They were always very black and truss beams and light and everything tech. Whereas we found what we wanted to be was more about the conversations around making an event happen. And that was, it's almost like we speak two languages. We speak the production events language, which is the ones and zeros of how all this stuff works.
Yeah.
But our clients are speaking very marketing, experiential languages. And we feel that we're the ones to bridge those gaps.
Yeah.
So for us, the thought behind it was, yes, it was a pot plant that I was looking at, but then it was really what we do is we plant a seed and then we nurture it until it grows. And that's what it is. And it was that kind of concept that we stuck to of actually what we more do, as much as we handle everything, is manage the relationships and nurturing something to make sure it turns out the right way.
Yeah.
So it's a bit corny, but that was the thought.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't think it's corny.
And the clients you're talking about before, Mercedes and some big name people, managing their expectations, because I'm sure they're fairly significant in terms of their expectations of you.
Yeah, and look, and we typically work with agencies. So I guess the names that the public would know is the Mercedes, but then we work directly with the agencies. Expectations is huge, and it's just all communication. It's just making sure that we're all on the same page, and really executing the same thing. Production, very specifically, it's really hard to imagine what we're talking about sometimes, because I'm going to say that we need 40 lights, and then there's no indication of what that looks like. Other than maybe at best case, I show you a plan where those lights are going to be. But the actual thing is, you really just have to trust me that it's going to work. That's kind of what it comes down to. So that's hard to do. So communication is kind of the key for us to managing expectation, because it's you're managing a budget and you're managing an output. So we just kind of we try and communicate the whole way. This is what this is going to look like, and this is what the goal is. And even more now, we do renders, and we do video renders to show people what we're talking about and show that we're on the same page. And the clients that work with us a lot, we find that they're happy to skip that stage, and they trust us, and they just go, I understand. I know what you're going to do. Let's go. And then, newer clients, we tend to, they want to see that scope and that scale to make sure that what they're saying to me, I hear and comes out the same way.
Because I think from, we watch from the audience, and, thinking back at like what for instance, the AFL Grand Final looked like last year, where, Kiss comes out and there's a big stage and there's, firecrackers shooting everywhere and stuff. Like, we're all sitting there going, oh, wow, that is pretty cool. And then, but somebody like you is behind that, making it all actually work and making sure that kids aren't getting, burnt by shooting flames and stuff like that. So there's a lot of it.
There's a bit of a hive mind going on there. And there is that's like expectations too, is the dream of what it looks like versus the realities of budgets, legislation.
Exactly.
Logistics. There's a bunch of things that have to be considered, and sometimes you're a bit of the downer person saying, this does look great, but unfortunately we have to have a handrail so no one falls off it.
That's okay. We're because we're accountants, we're also the downer people sometimes, so we get it. We get that.
We get to have a bit of both. We get to have the fun and be the downers. But it is kind of, communication and managing expectation. I think the worst thing that we could ever do would be indicate to somebody that everything's going to be the way they think it is when we know that it's not. So we always help guide people along the line, and they don't have to know all the things that we know. We just have to be on the same page.
I think that's just a key thing with any dealings with people and business, is that don't promise something you can't deliver. And give false expectations.
Absolutely. I think with businesses we work with too, we say the same thing to them. We subcontract and hire a lot of people as part of what we do to deliver big things, and I don't try and get necessarily bogged down in how every little thing works. I'd say we know quite a bit, but I want to work with the right people for the right job and make sure we're on the same page. And then usually if that's happening, the best thing I can do for my client is to zoom out and be aware of a bigger picture. It's the same, with what we do with you as well, is we're not involved with you as our accountants for me to understand everything about accounting. That would be
I don't think you'd want to.
It would just be a waste of my time and your time and everybody's time. Like I want to understand it, so I'm not I'm aware of what happens in my business. But I trust, we sign up to people and we trust to work with them. That so it can be an effective workflow for us ultimately that's the way it should work.
So you're telling me I shouldn't do a podcast, an accounting 101 and a tax 101 podcast? That might be a bit boring.
I reckon you can. I think there's something about giving away the sauce that people are scared of. That it's not the recipe. It's the process. It's the chef.
Exactly.
You can tell people all of it. I could I do. I constantly give people plans of exactly what I'm going to do. And they could say, we don't need you, but there's more to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I apply that to accounting. I apply that to everything I can know all the process, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to do a good job at it.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. And the vision for the company, for Pot Plant Productions, have you got any short-term or long-term goals for it?
Yeah, look, I would like us to be synonymous with achieving creative concepts for events in Australia. I would like us to be the one of the go-tos for when somebody wants to do something fun, new, exciting, that we're the team that they go to. And then I guess part of that is growth. Part of that's building more team members around us. We have a lot of crew that come as part of our team that grow with us, but just expanding that to really kind of be able to do the biggest things that come to Australia. If the Olympics come to Australia, I want to be at the Olympics, basically. That's the way my brain works, and I want to be in those big moments and be one of the people delivering it. So I think that's the vision for the business, is to just grow in a creative and healthy way, but go for big things.
Yeah.
And do you see any threats in terms of what you do?
As far as
I suppose technology, economic forces.
Yeah, look, we're in the end, and this is two different things for the podcast world and for the events world. In the podcast world, I think that it's just this steady growth and it's building podcasts with you and us supporting them and nurturing it and creating it a community together. I suppose the risk is that they're not going to continue their podcast, or maybe the risk is that their podcast is too good and then they want to go off into a bigger place and different people. But that's where I think the relationship thing comes in. Events world is subject to spending. So if you ever hear a recession, I assume that budgets tighten up in events, in car launches, in shoe launches, in all these things. Whenever money is tight, the party is the first thing cancelled. So we're always aware of that, but it is its own industry in the same sense of, you know, the sporting world is its own thing, and businesses have to launch products to continue making money. So for us, it's just understanding budgets. A lot of times we'll actually go into a project saying, we're almost approaching it the other way around. We want to understand the budget to create the best thing for them for a budget. Whereas sometimes I think that that's a hard pill to swallow for a client they don't want to give up that card because it means that that's the budget they're spending. Whereas with all good intent, we just want to spend our time creating something that is going to fit for that budget. And so that's maybe the game too. When time gets hard, you have to learn how to manage a budget, and you have to be really clear about different budgets get different things, but that should just be a conversation.
Yeah. I think there's a switch in mindset with those sorts of things, isn't there? That if I tell you what my budget is, you're going to spend every cent of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's typically what happens when you give, you know, when you're a customer and you give someone a budget, a supplier a budget, they say, oh, God, beauty, I've got, you know, 35K. So
I totally understand that. I'm not walking into a car yard saying I've got that amount of budget.
There's
no way I'm doing that. I'm just going to tell you the things I want, and I want to be your best car. So I totally get the mentality. I think it's just it's something that you have to grow into together. And just have chats about it and just say, look, maybe that can be a soft start. It doesn't have to be your exact budget. It can just be, are we in these sort of windows, or are we in these sort of windows? Because I just don't want to, especially with concept wise, I don't want to tell you ideas that are out of your budget that you then pass on to your client or your boss about what this is going to be. And then as soon as we have the budget talk, that doesn't exist anymore. That would be a worst case scenario.
So the Super Bowl's coming up. Do you watch that and then analyze the halftime entertainment?
Absolutely, yeah. The Super Bowl is worldwide known for having, I guess, the best halftime show, but it's also known in our world as where new gear gets launched. So all the latest lights and all the latest tricks get seen at the Super Bowl, and you'll see all the suppliers, the lighting suppliers going as seen at Super Bowl and doing all these things. So I absolutely watch it, and I think get inspired by it. And that's the way I think you should look at things like that. Is it should be inspiring to be like, wow, the fact that I don't even know how they do some of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I know how it works. I'm like, I don't get where you stored all of this.
Yeah, okay.
It's to cover a whole ground in a set in a very short amount of time and then make it disappear it's a very challenging thing to do.
Yeah. Have you ever been to a Super Bowl?
No, I haven't.
Yeah. A goal, maybe? If your accountant can wrangle it, like tax deduction, maybe.
Yeah, no, I would love to. I would love to, and I would be one of those people staring at the light the whole time.
Backstage pass because you want to see the actual tech, not the players.
Yeah, I say that like a lot. My partner like will notice me. We'll be at a gig or Cirque du Soleil, and I'm staring at like a cable. And there's amazing things happening, and I'm like, oh, man, they really made that look neat. That's really cool. And so that's just what happens,
Yeah.
You start doing
different
like
perspective, isn't it? You're looking at it from an events management point of view rather than from, oh, wow, I'm at Cirque du Soleil.
Yeah, I think it's a sign that I love it too. It's a sign that I really do like it.
Absolutely.
I get enjoyment out of it.
Amazing for your clients because you're actually really inquisitive about that sort of stuff because some people are just like, oh, well, this is the way we've always done production and therefore it's what happens.
I think you have to go. That's another one that Alex and I are very aligned on is you should be growing. So whatever, if there's new things out, you shouldn't be running from those things. You should be trying to figure out those things. And that goes for the podcast world as well. We don't want to just go just because that's the way it was done. It's the way it should be done.
Yeah.
As tech happens, there's new AR, VR goggles that have in the last week or so been changed the game. If people were to want to do a podcast where they sat down at this table and they could look at the conversation, that doesn't work with the camera setup we have in here or we currently do. So I'd like to think about how, if we were to offer those sort of things, I don't want to be reactive to that. I want to understand how that works. So when we can either suggest it to somebody or if somebody says, I want to record my podcast so we can watch it on VR goggles, that I don't look like a ghost and go, what?
Yeah, I've never heard of that before. Yeah. Well, I mean, you called me last week to, answer a question that we had about our podcast, and that is the sort of thing that is the reason why when you came out and had a chat, I just said to Shane, we have to actually engage professionals to do this because I have got no clue, and I could have gone to Officeworks and bought dodgy sort of kit and been doing it at home ourselves or at the office ourselves. But it's the other stuff that we just don't think about, and we have no skill in all of that, even down to, you're basically on the phone to Chelsea helping her, make sure that everything was aligned so that it could all be uploaded to where it needed to go.
Yeah. And I guess that's that recipe thing again is I would say a lot of our clients have done that, have bought the stuff and then come in and gone, I just don't, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. It works, but it doesn't work for us. And I think part of it is just treating it like a job or a business. If you want to do a podcast that way, then it is kind of treating it like that and being serious about it. It's one of those things. The gear is there. It's probably the same gear. Yeah. But it's just a different thing to do it one way or do it another way.
Yeah. It's just not actually the gear to us. It's not the gear because as you said, you can get it.
Yeah.
It's the stuff that we can't get from the gear, and someone has to know, and otherwise it's never going to work as well. And we, to keep us committed to the process as well, having other people involved saying, okay, come on, it's time to record. Or
I think that's time too. Is like I think time is really, really valuable. And when a lot of people are making these decisions about buying gear like that, they're not factoring in their time, and that's what gets them in the end.
Yeah.
And I have no issue if somebody wants to buy the gear and do it themselves. I completely support that. I support the community we're in, and we're not trying to get every single person to come in here. It's the ones that fit for us. Yeah. But it's just time that gets people.
There's a huge commitment to.
You're here for this time. Yeah. And then you've got whatever time that is here, it's double for the editing. And then if you're going to do video, it's an editing again. And then it's uploading and writing the blog and blurb and doing all these things, and then this 1 hour episode is sometimes turns into 8 hours of labor.
Yeah.
And a business like ours can pull in that labor because we're focusing on it all the time. But you at home doing it have to do those 8 hours.
Yeah.
And then that's where you start losing that stamina and losing that motivation. And you can see where people start to feel the weight of it, of that time decision.
Yeah. Completely outside of Pot Plant Productions, because this is not a business podcast. What makes Dave tick outside of being a director of Pot Plant Productions?
This is all I do. No, I like to surf. So I surf pretty regularly. On a good week, I surf a couple of times a week.
Yeah, nice.
Favorite spot?
I've been going to Anglesey lately. But anywhere up that Torquay way, 13th Beach,
13th Beach,
to Torquay, Anglesey, Lawn. Just depending on how far I feel like driving.
Really.
Yeah. Good podcasting time.
Yeah. So that, I would say, surfing I like to do. Again, I like to listen to a podcast. It's a full zone out for me. I like to listen to a podcast, and then I like the quiet in the water. I like that it's hard to do and it's fun to do, and my brain switches off.
Yep.
It's exercise. It ticks all the boxes for me. So I like that. And then music's always been a big part of my life. So I like watching live music. I have a bunch of instruments.
What instruments?
I have about 10 guitars, I would say, and keyboards and pianos and bass. Part of what we do here is write music for people for podcasts. So I'm one of the people that do that, which is purely because I like doing it.
Yeah.
And then I played music for a long time. So I came to Melbourne playing music and then stayed and started making a job. So between music and probably surfing, that's my two things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So,
I'm going to cheekily ask you this question because we talked about it before we went on air, and you said, don't talk to me about music theatre. So you said that you'd been on stage and backstage. So tell us how that works. You said you don't do it now, which is totally fine. But, obviously creativity, music, all part of your passion. So how did it all start?
The only thing I'll say to that is you made it sound like I brought up more musical theatre, which I didn't.
You didn't.
I didn't.
Dave did not bring up musical theatre.
I didn't drop this in, so you're asking a question. I've done it for
I can get you an agent if you like. So.
No, I'm fine. I've done it for a long time. I was doing music for a long time. I played guitar since I was about 5. And I showed an interest in that. So my parents put me in, I guess, some sort of performance schools.
Yeah.
Fun fact, I actually sang the national anthem at the...
Parents do that.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
And it's always a little bit not... I wanted to do Slash. And they put me in flamenco guitar.
Right.
And it was a very different thing in my brain of what I was doing. Fun fact, I sung the national anthem at Australia versus England at the cricket when I was about 10.
Wow.
In a group of kids.
Does that exist on YouTube? Can I find it?
I don't even know what year or what game.
I will find it.
And then I played in bands from about 14 up. I played in bands doing singing or being a guitarist. And I was born in Perth, and we were touring. We toured Asia a few times and we toured Australia a bunch of times. And it was going from Perth around Australia that we stopped in Melbourne a few times, and collectively with that group of people we went, if we want to chase this music thing, we can't be in Perth. We need to be somewhere where it happens.
Yeah.
So that was one of the first times I think I went, if I want to do something, I need to put steps into motion to do it. And so I picked up my stuff and moved to Melbourne.
Yeah.
So there was that. And then I was always doing audio engineering and production.
Did you do that at school or outside of school?
I did that once I finished high school. I went to a place called SAE and studied audio engineering, and I just always wanted to do something in production, whether it be playing music, but I really liked live. To be honest, I liked the organizing of the tour for the band as much as I liked being in the band.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I found this connection, and when I actually like this designing the merch and then figuring out where to print the merch and then figuring out how much do we need to sell to buy fuel to get us to the next place, and realize from doing these Asian tours and going all over the place that you can do these things.
Yep.
If you just go, well, how much money do we need and how do we make that money and what's the process? And so I went out of that, and as I was in a band, I was doing audio for events, and I very quickly went, I want to be the person designing these events. So I put myself into project management courses and started to push down those levels, and then just work my way through businesses and just constantly put my hand up. It was like, I want to be here last. I want to be the one doing it. I want more responsibility.
Yeah.
They would say, you need to be a rigger. I went, cool. I went and got my rigger's ticket.
Yeah.
Or you need this. And I just went and got those things. And then eventually just kept stepping until I was the person that was organizing it.
Yeah.
And then the progression step is having a business.
Yeah.
I went, I want to do that further. So I just went, well, the only way to do that is for me to do it. So we'll just do it.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense what you're saying, because when you're a musician or a theatre person or anything like that, and we have a specific interest in those sorts of things because our family are involved and all of that, but there has to always be something else, doesn't there? It's like it's important to think that because of the nature of the industry with either music or theatre or performance or production, it's really tenuous. Like you can be, 1 minute you can be the person that everyone wants, and the next minute it'll be, you've got to find something new to do. So
you do, yeah.
Good way to, mix the two of your passions, which are, front of stage and backstage.
I think interesting life skills too. I think anyone that has done anything in those worlds, I had a conversation on the weekend actually about somebody who's in a really successful band who I won't throw under the bus, and it's talking about what they were going to do on these next steps.
Yeah.
And I did that thing 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I just thought, the lessons that you've learned here, you'll be surprised what they can apply, and then how flexible you are and how thick skin you are, because you've had to take a lot of criticism and you've had to put yourself out there a lot.
Yeah.
And not a lot of people actually are willing to go stand in front of people and sing and risk it and suffer the consequences of that.
Yeah.
And you not that you're not going to be nervous about that, but you are going to have some thick skin, and you might find yourself in a different world where you won't even see it, but you did learn these lessons here, and you learn to be a very capable person.
Yeah.
And I know that when we look for people as part of our team, we use the word capable all the time. So I don't need the best person at that necessarily, but like capable people are worth their weight in gold, because you can hit them with something, and if they don't crumble, even if their answer is, I don't know the answer to that, that's way better than somebody, I think, who doesn't have that skill set and just says yes and crumbles behind it. The ability to say, I don't know the words, or I need time to practice this, or that's the skills that I think that I learned in that world. And I've encouraged other people I see doing those dreams and maybe hitting a wall and going, what am I going to do now? You've learned some skills that you're probably not aware of that you should employ.
Yeah. I think it's definitely true, and I really like the use of the word capable because I think it really does encapsulate the fact that you don't have to know everything, but capability is a big thing, isn't it? So you're capable to be resilient, to be, flexible, all of those sorts of things. So it's really important. And I think you're right that, people in industries that face the public, particularly like that, it's pretty tough, and you have to be pretty resilient, and you do learn a lot of things, but you're not actually being taught it by, being at uni or whatever. You're learning it from experience which is a big thing. And
yeah. I mean, on a small scale, I would say, I even hate this, but I would say it's handy for people to do karaoke every once in a while and just, just kind of like.
It's pretty confronting, isn't it?
Yeah, just that's the feeling of potential failure and losing it. I think that's a healthy.
Or maybe they just start their podcast, because I felt that with the podcast, and we've just released an episode which was one of our team members interviewing me, And it was really confronting to be interviewed by somebody because I know I can talk a lot, but they're asking questions that I haven't actually considered before.
Yeah.
So you've got to, so starting a podcast is probably not as fun as karaoke necessarily. Probably have a few drinks before you get
You
to
can
a
have a few
karaoke
drinks
bar.
into a podcast if you want. That's fine.
Maybe we could start doing karaoke with you guys. You could set us up a karaoke
we can sort that
bar
out.
in the office.
I'm not sure you want to hear me sing karaoke.
You're not that bad. You're not that bad. We used to get the SingStar out before, or when the kids were little, we'd get the SingStar out and have a go at, Blink 182 and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think they're handy. I mean, I think you've done a good job too. It's hard to flip the script on yourself, especially you as A, you're hosting this podcast, B, you're the head of a company, and then to flip it and give control over to somebody for both, who is, I'm going to ask you questions about this business from my perspective, and I'm going to put you in the flip seat. It's actually a bit of a weird seat to be flipped on. So credit to you for being willing to do it.
It was pretty weird. It was pretty weird. It's pretty weird to listen to myself back as well, as you would expect. I get you would get that a lot, wouldn't you? That people don't like to listen to themselves.
Yeah, I think that's a healthy reaction too.
Yeah.
I think something you get used to is that. But yeah, we do hear a lot is people don't like the sound of their own voice, don't want to see them. But I can also see these big change in people that 10, 12 episodes in become kind of used to it. And some people talk a lot and they don't have an issue. But for those who aren't the best public speakers, I think you can see a little change in them where something happens and they kind of, I call it like unlocking a new skill. It's like a video game. It's like you don't know how to do it, and then you know how to do it, and you don't actually go backwards from there. You just unlock it and something clicks. So that's exciting. That was probably a hidden thing about podcasting is watching people who clearly want to do something and they've got passion about it. Yeah. Then like find this confidence in doing it as well. Is kind of a cool thing to see.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. I have always asked this question at the end of each episode that we've already put together. What's next for Dave? Not necessarily Pot Plant Productions, but what's next for Dave? What is making you tick in 2024, and what are your plans for the future?
Yeah, I've got some big things on. I'm looking to buy a house with my partner Claire. So we're deep in the world of that.
Yep.
That's obviously a big one. I think the business, I say a lot, but it is got a lot of passion in there. So I think the growth and having fun in that too. I think like it's pretty important to me to have fun every day.
Yeah.
With stress. So that's a big one for me. And then, I mean, I've said to myself at the start of this year, this was going to be more of a year of being in Melbourne and pushing the business, especially buying a house.
Yeah.
So I've made that commitment, but I think day to day, just enjoyment. I think no issue working hard, but just making sure that there's always like it's not getting stuck into a routine and going, I wake up, I go to work, I come home, I cook dinner, I watch the same TV show. Yeah. It's making sure that there's saying yes to friends, wanting to meet up and just going out for one drink or a bite to eat. And getting up in the morning and going for that surf and just making sure I'm saying yes to those moments is probably my goal for 2024 is just to not take the sleep in, but take the road. Yeah,
because it's a 24-hour gig, isn't it? Being in the job that you're in, you if something's happening, you've got to be there to set it up. So it's not like you can say I'm going to work 9 to 5. Like your goal can't be I'm a 9 to 5 person because it's not the industry that you're in, is it?
No, it's not. And I think it's embracing that as well. Yep. As the big days for us are really big days. Yep. They generally are 16, 17 hour days, and then a tiny bit of sleep in doing it.
Yeah,
stuff that I don't ask people to do basically, but we do.
Yeah.
But the flip side of that is just making sure that we don't then work 2 weeks straight. That we remember to find that, maybe it's okay if we leave a bit early on a Friday. Or it's just remembering those little things to.
Yeah. There still has to be work-life balance, right? It's just that it's different for you because the work is actually sometimes at 2 a.m. or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah.
And so the balance has to be that maybe 9 to 5, next week you're not doing any 9 to 5. You're just doing all the other stuff.
Yeah, so. Look, and it might not work, but it may be something like the Super Bowl's on Monday. And it's on at 9 a.m. So maybe it's if things permit, that we go, you know what, why don't we just be silly and watch the Super Bowl and have a couple of drinks way earlier than is practically responsible on a Monday.
Exactly.
But that's one of those things where it's, you know, maybe we should do that. If we can work it in, it's not such a bad thing.
Yeah. And I'll just reiterate for all of Dave's friends who might be listening, he did say on this podcast that he's going to say yes to you more this year. So that I'm just going to put that in there so that you can hold Dave accountable to his yes.
I actually think I'm already pretty good at this. So I think they'll appreciate that.
That's good. I think it's a really good thing to be have as your focus, to say yes to friends, because I think oftentimes business owners get really busy with business, and friends are the ones that, you know, they'll be trying to catch you on a Sunday afternoon, or they'll be trying to do that. And I know that's something that Shane and I probably don't do as well as we should either. You know, because you've got your commitments. But Dave's friends, he's going to say yes to you more than he used to.
Yep, I promise.
I want to thank you for your time today, Dave. It's been really great. It's so good to have you in our community, because, as I said, this podcast would not exist if it wasn't for Dave and his team at Pot Plant Productions. And today we are recording in Dave's studio which is really cool, and it's a great space to come and spend some time if you're thinking about doing a podcast, or if you currently do your own podcast and you need some help, because I think I have put Dave in touch with a few people who are doing their own podcast and it's taking up too much of their time. Please get in touch with Dave at Pot Plant Productions, because he is one of the best in the business. So thank you so much for coming in and talking to us today, Dave.
No worries. Thanks for having me on, and you know, I'll just edit out bits I don't know. Anyway, so
that's exactly it.
It might be completely different by the time you hear it.
It'll go for 5 minutes, I think.
You've actually done it. I was going to plug myself. You did a good job just saying that.
I'm glad.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Peace.